Welcome. I am Ryan Herman. I am the host for this room for today and tomorrow. So if you are in room B from time to time, you might see or hear my voice. Today is a panelist session for session 1, room B. So I will be assisting the moderator in letting people in the waiting room, watching for hand raising and or chat comments or questions. So during this, we ask that everybody except for the panelists keep their mics muted. If you have a question, use the hand raising function or write it in the chat, and we will read those when time allows for it. So if you have any questions, reach myself. You can find me under Ryan Herman Mod 2, or in parentheses it says host, and I will be here answering questions if Pete is unavailable. Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, I just wanted to add, just for my own selfish needs, if you're in the chat, and could you put your last name on there as well, just in case we get 15 Aidens and we don't know who's talking? That would be really helpful for me. I see some first names and initials, but I would love to see full names.
Yeah, if everybody can go to the participant tab and find your name, and then go to the More tab, and you can rename yourself. Please put your first and last name so that everybody can see who it is they're answering. There might be a checkbox that allows you to keep that for future meetings as well. That way you only have to do this the one time. And for the rest of the presentations at the Camp Kentucky GIS conference, your name should be the first and last name. Thanks for the reminder.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Ryan, did you have any other remarks?
No, sir.
Okay.
It's your show.
Okay. If you want to stop your share, I'll go ahead and share my slides here. Let's see. Okay, while I'm getting things started, folks, I want to welcome everyone to this panel session on community GIS partnerships. If you build it, they will come. This is a panel session, which means you have a chance, hopefully a good chance, to participate in discussion, ask questions after some comments by the participants. So I'd like to give a few introductory remarks and a few logistics on how we're going to run this, and then hand it over for you for comments and questions. And Ryan and I will explain how that's going to happen here in a few minutes. But I am the moderator, Pete Croswell, with Croswell Schulte IT Consultants in Frankfurt. You see the panelists here, all of whom are extremely well experienced and recognized experts in GIS, and particularly in building and maintaining partnerships, multi-organizational GIS programs that have really worked. And in fact, the state of Kentucky is kind of a focus of long-term, very successful GIS partnerships, partnership programs. So our panelists here, I'm going to give a brief introduction. I think none of them actually need an introduction because they are experts in the state and nationally in this area and are known by just about everybody. But let me give a few brief remarks. We got Kyle Bearden, the Bowling Green GIS manager and the consortium partnership with the county and partners there around Bowling Green. He began his career in 1989 at the Western Kentucky University Center for Local Government, holds a BA in Geography, Cartography, and a Master's in Environmental Science with an emphasis in GIS from Western Kentucky University. He served as camp president and has had various duties with camp and other professional organizations. I asked all the panelists to give me a little personal note about their background and how they got into GIS. And he said that his first interest in GIS was love of cartography at an early age from the Tolkien books and National Geographic and other things. And like all of us, sort of tracking locations on family trips around the state and around the country. But when he got to college, he realized geography was it, and he jumped in and hasn't looked back yet. So Kyle, welcome.
Thank you.
Tricia Brush, she's got a lot of experience in GIS, both from a technical side and organizational management side. Educationally, she's got a bachelor's degree in geography from the University of Cincinnati and an MBA from Baker University in Kansas. And she really is the kind of person that has that mix of technical skills and organizational and management skills, which are really vital in running GIS programs, particularly multi-participant programs. She's a certified GISP. She was one of the founders of CAMP and past president of CAMP, and has had involvements in other professional organizations. She says that she didn't choose geography as a field to study. It kind of found her. She was taking a lot of courses and realized, hey, I better major in this. So got her degree at UC, and then went out to Kansas. But back then, a professor told her if she wants to make money in geography, she needs to get into GIS. So she took that advice, and here she is with a lot of success under her belt. Kurt Bynum, he's also a GISP and the manager of the Louisville Jefferson County Information Consortium, Logic. Been in that role since 1986. Prior to that, he had a number of more technical roles in GIS and mapping. Just a wide range of experience in technical and management topics. And even though he's an old guy, he keeps his hands and his head in that game, keeping very up to date with the technology and how it serves the users there in Logic. I think he got into geography and GIS, also pretty early, because he realized he was not going to have a career in professional baseball. He kind of had to leave that to his son years later. But has been in the field for a long time and very successful. And he'll tell you a little bit more about Logic here in a few minutes. Will Carpenter, Owensboro, Davis County, GIS. Since 2000, he's been the GIS manager for that program. He's worked for a number of private sector GIS related services firms. He's got a Bachelor of Science in Geography from the University of Kansas, another Kansas link, and a Master of Science in Spatial Data Analysis from Purdue. Matter of fact, Purdue has been almost from the beginning one of the leaders in image analysis and other geographic analysis technologies. I remember that from way back. Interesting, he told me that kind of like me, he grew up as a kid with a love of maps, and I can see his bedroom like now covered with maps, and he always sort of liked the landscape and what was out there and how things were distributed. So it was kind of a natural for him to get into geography and GIS when he got into college. And then finally, Steve Chino. He's been involved in GIS in a variety of capacities since 1997. Got a Bachelor of Science in Geography from Western Kentucky University. And prior to joining the city of Paducah, his current employer, he worked as a survey technician with Hunter Martin and Associates, internship with the Area Development District in Bowling Green, and joined the city of Paducah in 2011 as a GIS specialist, and has remained with the city since that time. And Steve is kind of an example of what I've seen with other GIS people, other GIS management people that have been very effective in that role for managing GIS programs, but has also risen to become a management role for IT overall in government. So I think that certainly credit to him personally, but it shows, I think, how GIS itself is a enterprise technology, and the skills and management capabilities for GIS sort of extend broadly to IT in general. Okay, so just a little bit of an introduction. Looks like I lost the icon for Steve, your program, but anyway, just a little map. We got to have a map for this session, and these are the consortiums distributed throughout the state. We'll get into a little more detail on some background about those. As an introduction on the topics that we're going to be covering, and it's pretty open, but we would like the participants in their comments, and you as panelists in their comments, and you as participants to focus on these kind of topics, more management topics. What were the challenges in getting a partnership started? You know, how did you get started? What kind of formal and informal agreements are in place, and what makes sense? What sort of benefits and business case is there for a partnership? Organizational structure issues, you know, funding strategies, and how does the general public and business community sort of enter into some kind of participation in partnership programs? Those are my introductory comments. Again, thanks for participating, and I'm going to hand it over first to Kyle, just for a few remarks about your program, just to kick things off.
All right, thank you, Pete. So we've been asked to keep it brief, 5 minutes, and I want to try to honor that. Let me start off by saying what an honor it is to be asked to serve on as a panelist during this session. Holy cow, we got a lineup of rock stars here, and then there's me, right? But I'll tell you what, you're just as likely to learn from my mistakes as from their successes. So I think I'll round things out pretty well. So I don't want to talk a whole lot about the history of our collaborative GIS because I'd rather focus on the things that have been going on more recently. But just briefly, we've been around since roughly '98. And even before that, I think there had been some efforts towards collaborative GIS and maybe trying to establish a consortium that just for whatever reason didn't take off. But when I came in '98, I will say there was a very good, very strong interagency working relationship among the technical level people that were doing GIS work and automated mapping work. And that served as a pretty good base for the things that came afterwards. In '98, we had a mayor that actually was very interested in GIS and in particular in collaborative GIS and cost sharing and things like that. So we put together a consortium. From that effort, I think at one point there was as many as 20 organizations involved. We funded a needs analysis and strategic implementation plan. And once we got that implementation plan and people started looking at cost for all the, the pie in the sky deals that we were looking towards, they started dropping like flies. So we ended up with 3 main players that came together and funded a couple of data acquisition projects, new aerial photography, new planimetric mapping. And one of the really good things that came out of that, if you think back to '98, projection on the fly we weren't really into it yet. I think it was pretty new if it existed at all. And one of the challenges that we faced at the time, even though there were good working relationships among the technical level guys, was we weren't all on a common base map. We weren't all on a common projection and datum. And so even when we got data from each other, it was a process just to make that data usable, So those acquisition projects really helped out in terms of at least putting us on a common base map. A couple of the challenges that we faced, and again, I don't want to dwell, I'd rather dwell on the positive things that are going on now, but one of the big things that hurt us in the past was we were kind of late to the game in trying to establish a consortium. And so the problem with that is all of our major players, all the utility companies, City of Bowling Green, Planning Commission, we all had already gone through substantial investments and efforts to set up, GIS programs or at least automated mapping programs. And so everybody already had all these systems in place and had already spent a bunch of money on data, which sounds like it would be a good thing, except for the fact that, and I don't know if this is common, you guys might be able to fill me in, but I don't know if this is common, was common at the time outside of Bowling Green, but in Bowling Green and Warren County at the time, all the executive level folks had really been sold on the ideal that GIS was a potential revenue stream and that you could at least try to recover your costs. And so all these guys, they had spent all this money and set this stuff up, and they weren't very interested, as I close my fist to illustrate, they were not very interested in sharing any of that data out because they all thought they could, get some cost recovery out of that data. So that really worked against us. So fast forward to today, it's, over those 20 some odd years, it's been kind of hit or miss. The depression, the recession years were hard on our shared GIS. But fast forward to today, in recent years, we really have a lot going on. There's a lot of renewed interest in collaborative GIS. Currently, we're trying to stay away, just because of past experiences, we're trying to stay away from the consortium word a little bit. We're kind of sticking right now with collaborative GIS. But in the past couple of years, we've started, coming together with all our agencies again, kind of reintroducing ourselves to each other. Various agencies have hosted meetings to let people know what they're into and what they're doing. I was really amazed at how far, everybody's implementations had come. Even though I've been in touch with these people over the years, I had no idea how far they had come. And so it's very impressive. And we've grown to the point now, and I'll give a couple of details on how or why. We actually have a formal agreement with Planning Commission and the county and the city. And we actually have, because we're kind of all in the same network domain, we actually have a shared enterprise geodatabase that we all work against. So all three of us have access to each other's most current data. We've replicated that data out to our GIS server, and we're building our web apps off of that nice current data. And we're just starting to kind of take the baby steps towards encouraging the other agencies to come in and join us, particularly the utility agencies and different folks. And so with that, I think just a couple of kind of keys to that more recent success. And even in the past, one of the things that allowed us to do things, if we had successes in the past, the key was that we were able to focus on common needs. And so, early on, everybody could look at new, up-to-date aerial photography, higher resolution, as well as planimetric data. That was a common need. So we were able to come together and do that. More recently, and what was missing in the past, I think, is a real GIS champion with clout. I've been a GIS champion at the City of Bowling Green for 20 some odd years, but I don't have any clout, to be honest. In recent years, we've got a couple of guys have come on board that, in as far as I'm concerned, are far more instrumental in getting this stuff, up and going again than I am. And I'm going to acknowledge those guys. First of all, our City Public Works Director, Greg Meredith. He came to us from the Transportation Cabinet, so he already had a good understanding of GIS. And one of the things I did right, I think, was I got him to go to San Diego with me to the user conference early on. And I think that was pretty eye-opening. So he got a pretty enlightened perspective of GIS, and he's really in support of it. And the other guy is Ben Peterson, who is the executive director of our City County Planning Commission. I think I know Ben is on here. So Ben is actually a GIS guy. That's a name that probably a lot of you people recognize. He's a GIS guy from way back from Paducah. And so now he comes to Bowling Green, and all of a sudden he's an executive level person, but he's still a GIS guy. So he's been a huge advocate of collaborative GIS and trying to get this stuff going. And those two guys in particular have been very instrumental. But beyond
Kyle,
those guys,
I think in the interest of time, we're going to move on here pretty quick. So why don't you conclude your remarks?
Perfect. I was pretty much done. IT's on board. That's the only other thing I was going to say. IT is great. So.
All right, Kyle, thank you. Let's move ahead. Trish, you're up here. Let me try to bring up the slide. Okay.
All right, good morning. Thank you. It's so great to be here with everyone this morning, and it's very much an honor to be on the panel as well. And I am honored to talk to you today about LinkGIS and the partnership that we've had for 35 years. This partnership was formed in 1985, and this all came out of a hepatitis outbreak. If you can imagine a child playing in a mud puddle that actually turned out to be raw sewage, as he ran home to his mother to get cleaned up, she was getting ready to scurry off to work. She was working at a country club in the kitchen. As you can imagine, she may not have washed her hands properly, and thus there was a hepatitis outbreak. At that point, many of the government agencies and local utilities were asked to find who owned that one pipe where the raw sewage was leaking out of. And it was very difficult. And so at this point in time is when they were challenged to find a way to manage these assets. And that's where GIS was born. I'll just say this really quickly because Jack mentioned that many of us have been pioneering in GIS in Kentucky for many years, and our customer number is 154. So we adopted Esri very, very early and very quickly. Some agreements we have in place are interlocal agreements, MOAs. The interlocals are with the partners, which are the fiscal courts, the water district, sanitation district. The MOAs are with like the PVA and the clerk because they're state representatives. They cannot enter into an interlocal agreement. They have to have a memorandum of understanding or agreement. Statement of works are something we use when we're doing some pretty huge projects with some heavy lifting. And we want to make sure that the product that we're creating is going to be the product that the end user is going to use. We also enter into contracts for aerial imagery. This year we contracted with Wolpert for that. And then we also contract with Eagle View every 2 years is their business model. SWOVA and Stantec are a couple of the other agencies or other vendors we've contracted out for SQL and for cloud-based services. So these are some things that we have in place as far as agreements. Ongoing challenges, I'm sure, are not any different than what you're facing yourself. So how many tax dollars should go to pay for GIS? Should GIS be funded by fees? Should digital data sales, is that just the funding mechanism? And these challenges and these talks continue years after year to be brought up. And we're still really wrapping our heads around how does this really work and what makes the funding successful. We have multiple counties, but we are asking the question or getting asked the question currently, should we be one county or the many counties that we've served over the years? We do serve 3 counties with 34 cities. Those 3 counties are Kenton, Campbell, and Pendleton County. Pendleton County is a contractual agreement, so it isn't technically under the LinkGIS partnership umbrella, but we've served them for 13 years. And our user community, as you can imagine, all of the partners that we have, and internal as well for us as the Planning Commission. But the website is honestly our flagship product, linkgis.org, if you get a chance to check it out. It does most of our heavy lifting around the office. I was doing some metrics on that last week and realized that we were up 30% from 2019, the usage of our website. We also track the PDF maps that get printed off the website. Last year, there were 17,000 maps printed from our website. So that was for free. Think about if we charged for those. It's $15 per map. That's $255,000 that we are giving away in free maps on the website. So just something to think about. Pete, can we move to the next slide, please? So the funding is where a lot of people the eyes glaze over and they're like, oh, I don't understand this. So we created some infographics. Lewis Hill on my team was so gracious to help me create these. And you can see that under that LinkGIS partnership umbrella, it is the Kenton and the Campbell County partnerships. This very quickly shows you how much each partner is paying, how much is in data sales. And also we have something that may be unique, is something called multi-year initiatives. Multi-year initiatives is a fund that actually gets put aside and set aside for imagery acquisition, LiDAR, as well as oblique imagery, and of course, planimetric updates. So this is something that we don't have to hold out the hat or pass the hat around and kind of hope and pray that we can get the money we need to get imagery. We've also used this though for, we had a seller right-of-way management, and that was a special project that was being paid out of multi-year initiatives as well. So hopefully this gives you a little snapshot of how the funding is, and it is different for both counties, but they still are a collaborative partnership. Can we move to the next slide, please? So we do talk about collaboration and communication tools. The way that our partnership is set up, we do have a guidance committee. If you think about these are the executives that make the decisions about how to spend the money. And then who makes recommendations to that guidance committee is the technical committee. Technical folks would be like me and my counterparts from the other partnerships or the other partners. So we would make recommendation to the guidance committee. It could be on aerial imagery. It could be on like Acela, the right-of-way management. Here you can see several of the projects that we've done. Paver Saver is something that we just created in-house. Instead of paying the $17,000 a year to Acela, we decided to save the money for the partnership and brought it in-house in Survey 123. And that's something that if you want to hear more about, on Wednesday, Joe Buzzmeyer is going to be presenting at 11:15 in room A, and you can hear more about that product. We do Road Reporter, Northern Kentucky Map Lab, and hopefully some of you are familiar with that, as well as our drone services. Now, the keys to success, the truth is, I mean, you can see all these words here and they look very lovely and very textbook, but the truth is that I have a dream team. And the dream team is what makes all of this successful. These people on this team are passionate. They love the work that they do, and they love helping others make decisions and see the world from a perspective that not everyone gets to look at. You can't always get answers from a spreadsheet. Sometimes you have to look at a map and see things geographically. But I do believe in leadership development, because I want to stand shoulder to shoulder by other leaders. And that's what I aim to grow at my team, and resiliency as well as team building. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited to hear from everyone else. And Pete, it's back to you.
You're muted, Pete.
Pete, you're muted.
Thank you, Kurt. Thanks for your remarks, Tricia. And I was trying to say there that in the end, it really does come down to people, and it means good team dynamics, good management. So great job there with LinkGIS. Kurt, you are up next.
Thanks, Pete. If you would go to my first slide. You say, what the heck's this got to do with GIS? Unlike a hepatitis outbreak, what started thinking about not necessarily GIS, but a better way to share information about infrastructure, to better respond to situations, understand who owns what, who maintains what in a collaborative way. In February 1981, the combined sewer system in Old Louisville, which is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the University of Louisville, blew up. MS, the Metro Sewer District, City of Louisville, were scurrying, trying to, much like in Tricia's experience, and we've all been through that historically. Who owns what? How do we recover? What's the damage? Who needs to be evacuated, how do we recover? So this event kind of kickstarted the notion of there's a better way. We've got to do this better. Next slide, please. Fast forward, the current partners in Logic, pardon me, consist of Louisville Metro Government, our city county governments merged in around 2000.
You just muted yourself by mistake.
Sorry, here we go. Sorry. Not quick enough on the mouse. Our current partners are Louisville Metro Government, Metropolitan Sewer District, Jefferson County PVA, and Louisville Water Company. We also have participant relationships, licensee relationships with a number of entities in Jefferson County, including Jefferson County Public Schools, University of Louisville, our Transit Authority, also Oldham and Bullock County. So Logic, to an extent, is somewhat regional. Next slide. Our organization and governance defined by our Logic Partnership Agreement, our MOA. We're governed by a policy board consisting of chief executives from all four of our partners. MSD serves as our managing partner, our fiscal agent. Technically, I and our Logic team are employees of MSD, but we're jointly funded. The MOA also defines roles and responsibilities for me as Logic manager, our staff, what we're responsible for. It also mandated a standing Logic steering committee. And these groups are very, very active and help us lead Logic forward. Next slide. Some of our early challenges. When our partnership was formed, we had a separate city-county government. And generally, they were of differing parties, competing interests, didn't get along a lot of times. There was really no history of government and utility collaboration. Everything was siloed, my data, my records, my paper. Shared GIS, actually GIS itself, was a brand new concept, new technology. And the notion of building and sharing that resource was really foreign. All recognized that there would be an expense to building this new system, and that frankly, it would take years to build. Of course, this is in the days before Google Maps or anything online. We had to build our data from the ground up because it was all in paper. There was no GIS expertise, no staff. We too engaged in a feasibility study that somewhat soothed some concerns, some angst, demonstrated that GIS would certainly work in our community, and it pointed out some near-term return on investment. Like Bowling Green and others, back up one more. We needed a champion as well. We were fortunate that MSD stepped up and assumed some initial risk and some funding and forced the issue. Next slide, please. How we're financed, it's essentially annual allocations to a combined operations and capital budget. We do have a small offset from licensees, custom product revenue. We've learned over the years that there's no way we're going to sell enough maps to offset costs. The real value in GIS, at least in recent years, is to essentially make it open, make it more widely used. Every year, I present and our partners negotiate a fiscal year budget that results in an annual amendment to our MOA that defines partner funding shares. Again, MSD serves as our fiscal financial agent. I send out hefty invoices to our partners every quarter. I report expenditures versus budget to our policy board on a quarterly basis. And in fiscal years where we finish the fiscal year in the black, those excess funds are posted to a reserve account that can be used at the discretion of the policy board, given emergencies, rainy day fund, so to speak. We are actively exploring new internal and external funding sources, including regionalization, inviting other counties to participate in the consortium, and also looking internally at leveraging capital construction projects, various permit fees, review fees, and so forth, and allocate those funds to help offset the cost of running logic. Next slide. How we collaborate, oh Lord, meetings out the wazoo. Our policy board meets at least quarterly, certainly more often if any business issue comes up. Our standing steering committee, consisting of GIS coordinators, managers, and supervisors across our partnership, meet monthly. We host quarterly user group meetings. We have an on-call, 24/7 on-call coverage and an online help desk solely dedicated to logic issues. One thing we've tried to impress, and our team supports this wholeheartedly, our internal logic team is seen as an extension of our partner staff. They can call on us, pull us into projects, consult, and we do that regularly. We have a hefty and growing open data portal. There's a presentation on that Wednesday afternoon. We heavily leverage ArcGIS Online. I might mention we have about 300 ArcGIS Online named users and about 200 desktop users in our community. We have a growing map hub online through our website with a growing number of online maps, apps, and you can go online and download PDF maps. There's a whole library of those. We host and conduct a number of training sessions, workshops that are either stock online training or in person for particular issues that our users need. We leverage social media, teleconferencing. All of our team are, during COVID crisis, we're working online as well. And we do outreach to community and professional groups. Just today, saw an invitation to a local community group inviting us to come talk about logic, what we have and what we do. Next slide.
Kurt, if I might just point out a couple of things you might question Kurt on these two first points. One of the things that makes logic work is the way that Kurt and his staff engage stakeholders, including policy board members, and these are senior executives of the partner organizations, but also steering committee members who are sort of mid-management. Those are GIS leaders in the different organizations. That really works. It takes some overhead on Kurt's part, but that kind of an effective engagement really helps streamline the whole program.
Might point out some of the keys to the success of our partnership. A GIS champion did step forward, assumed some of the initial financial burden, and had the approach, truly, if we build this right, others will participate. We all need spatial data to do our job. There was early financial and organizational commitment to the partnership, and Logic has a community mission, purpose, and branding. I think that's important. We've worked hard to maintain the Logic brand and the fact that it is truly a community resource. We have a very active policy board and technical committee. Our policy board consists truly of chief executives, the executive director of MSD, president of the water company, our elected PBA, and Mayor Fisher's, one of Mayor Fisher's chiefs, chief of innovation and technology. They take this very seriously. They actually meet and debate. We had early involvement from other agencies. For no other reason, they were curious to see if we could really pull this off, and they stayed. We did make appropriate use of consultants and still do. I think that's important. We had some long-range goals and visions, but we try to be careful to meet incremental needs very early on in the partnership. If we found out there was a neighborhood meeting, we would make maps. We would proactively support those types of things. The fact that MSD was apolitical, it gave us kind of a safe harbor to grow data, to grow the system, to grow our staff, and essentially develop the system the way we needed to. We tried to keep an early low profile, and we didn't oversell. It was important that we cultivated, the partnership needed a full-time core GIS staff, plus power users among our various partner agencies. It was important that our partners adopt and use GIS themselves rather than flip our users a fish. We wanted to teach them how to fish. So some of the keys to our success. Benefits of a partnership approach, there's strength in numbers. Split the cost up, share the goals. We're building a community system. A shared enterprise is cheaper than building individual silos. It just is. A shared GIS has forced procedures, workflows, standards that we all share. It creates efficiencies. It has eliminated data and operational redundancies. We've built applications that we've been able to leverage among all of our users. It has promoted data and application sharing. Why build a unique app for one user when the other 4 partners would benefit from it? So we collaborate heavily in those areas. It has forced vertical and horizontal integration. In that, I mean, from the data maintainers, the GIS technicians, create and maintain data that is absorbed vertically through the organization and presented to decision makers in either dashboards or summaries or what have you. But it's also forced horizontal integration within our own partners and across our partner boundaries. And it's built on itself. You build a base map, you build parcels, next addresses, and before you know it, you have a zoning layer. That's just the way GIS works. And the bottom line, it's resulted in better public service in our community. GIS is a workhorse in Louisville. It's not an academic exercise. Its tentacles are in just about every branch of government, utilities, from call takers to construction. So that's my spiel. I think that's the last slide, Pete.
Yep, that's it. Thank you, Kurt.
Okay.
Great remarks. Will, you're up. Will Carpenter, Owensboro, Davis County GIS program.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity to participate in the panel. It's certainly good company, and I'm already learning a lot. And I thought I knew the ropes, at least, about how we did it. We started our consortium in 2000, and we didn't have a disaster or an illness or what have you to instigate. We had three individuals from our sustaining agencies that each saw the advantage of GIS, but they also had sticker shock. And from the city government, the municipal utility, and the sanitary utility, they decided to pool their resources and start the program. And I was hired shortly after that. Our structure, it was alarmingly informal for 2 or 3 years. We had no documented agreement. I do not recommend this approach. However, the people who saw the advantage of GIS were uniquely cooperative, and while they were in place, that was manageable. And then we quickly got in to a memorandum of understanding among the agencies. And speaking of the agencies, city government and the municipal power and water utility, the sanitary utility, that's OMU, Owensboro Municipal Utilities, and Regional Water Resource Agency, which is our sanitary utility, were the three originators, and then fiscal court for Davis County came on shortly after that. Then we have a few agencies that are brought in because of the support that these four primary funding agencies provide. So our Consolidated Dispatch, Owensboro Metropolitan Planning Commission, as well as the clerk's office, the sheriff's office, and the PVA. The funding is not a fee for service, and we're certainly not making bank on selling data. But what we do is we have our budget that's approved by those four primary agencies, the city government, county government, and the two utilities, and split the check four ways. And one of the metrics that I use to provide evidence that each agency is seeing value for their dollar is track our distribution of staff hours over what type of project. So if I'm working on a project for the city government, it's coded and so many hours went that way. In our budget, labor is by far the most expensive item. And so by tracking where the staff hours are being spent, that's a indirect measurement of how much, what portion of the bill or the value you're receiving for your dollars. We don't, let me change that direction. When I came on board, there was no GIS, but there was some digital mapping in CAD environment. What we did find though was with four funding agencies, I found 5 different parcel layers and none of them matched. Of course, this is not unusual. You've seen this as well. But we did have that provided a great opportunity. One of the better parcel layers, as you might guess, was at the PVA's office, and they were able to provide an in-kind contribution in lieu of cash by converting their AutoCAD parcels into a homogeneous parcel layer, and rather than having to go out and contract for that, their contribution was recognized as an in-kind contribution. As far as our size, we have about 75 named users, and we follow a very lean organization. The idea was to have a few people who were GIS experts available to the various departments and agencies to provide the technical expertise in how to gather data, how to house data, how to provide solutions. So they didn't have to know every in and out of GIS technology, but rather could fold their technology into their existing workflow. We've seen the same value of power users develop in the agencies as well, and in one sense, it's put us out of work in some of the more frontline elementary type of GIS solutions. They simply do it on their own, and that's all to the good. And I should credit RWRA. In addition to the PVAs providing their parcels, RWRA on their own had already acquired photography from 1999, and then the consortium was able to pay to extract products, the orthophotos and the planimetrics and so forth. So that in a nutshell is the history of GIS in Davis County.
All right, Will, thank you very much. Good comments. All right, Steve Chino, way out there in the far western reaches of the state of Kentucky. You're up.
All right, thanks for having me. Will, you had a timer on. You were exactly 9 seconds away from 5 minutes. I got you. I got you pegged. All right, thanks for having me on the panel. Just like Kyle said, a bunch of rock stars on here. These guys really know what they're doing. And at the same time, there's rock stars in the audience. Just like Kyle said, a lot of this stuff that you're seeing is not just from the work that we've done. And in my case, it's not, very little of the work that I did. It was by the people that came before me. And just for him, like with him, Ben Peterson is one of those. So he's an architect from way back. And I would recommend you seek him out as well. He's in the crowd today. But just, paying tribute where it's due. He got me back into the game. I was in the private sector for a while, and he lured me back, and I've been back ever since. And now I have that position at the city and enjoy it and get to flex some different brain muscles. And so that's a testament to Pete's earlier remarks that what you're finding more and more is the GIS people also need to be tech people, and they need to know how the stuff works behind the scenes. It's not enough anymore to just say, I want to build an app. Now you have to know a little bit of Python. You have to know a little bit of Java. You have to know what a JSON, REST service, endpoint, all these things are. And so that kind of leads me back into how we got to that point in the city of Paducah. Back in '95 was when the thoughts first started getting thrown around that something needed to be done. Just like you've heard from all these people before us, you had a lot of different people going in a lot of different directions, which is great if you're trying to create a product to sell. Then you have a unique product. But in our case, and in most of your all's cases as well, we're trying to come to a homogeneous data set that everybody can use and everybody can get value from. And so that happened in the city, like I said, around '95. They first obtained some GIS data in CAD format. I think that's how a lot of people started. A lot of this large data collection was not done, in any kind of shapefile or geodatabase at the time. A lot of that stuff was from scanned drawings or drawings that were made in DWG or DXF and then brought forward, or MicroStation. And so it wasn't until 1999 that Paducah and McCracken County signed their first GIS agreement, along with the Paducah Water and Paducah Power Systems. And it would be another 2 years before they first obtained some aerial imagery. So in those formative years, it was all about getting on the same page, getting everybody using the same data, and getting that workflow set up so that everybody could share. Not long after that, just about a year after we obtained those photographs, we created a GIS coordinator position in the city. And very quickly after that, it started taking off. We had 911 joined in, the Joint Sewer Agency joined in. We created a GIS tech position for the city, started coming up with our centerline data to get everything kicked off. So we were off to the races. And it has been that way ever since. We have quarterly meetings. We have, like I said before, we've got 6 members, the city of Paducah, McCracken County, Paducah JSA, which is the Joint Sewer Agency, Paducah Water, Paducah Power Systems, and the E911 system. And last year, we have started courting the PVA. Once the PVA, the long-standing PVA, 20 plus years, did not get back into office, and we got a new PVA, that opened up an avenue that we had not been able to exploit before. That's the other thing too, is we have these partners that collect data similar to ours every year, but we were not getting to use that data. The PVAs everywhere, almost all of them are collecting aerials every year, every other year. And that was something that we really wanted to get into our mix, not only to get access to that data, but also to come up with a better collection criteria. They'll collect data just about any time, and we're a little more picky. We try to make sure we get it certain times of the year. We pick what we want. And so we've worked with these partners, and we continue to, and I'm going to be really brief just so we can get into the question and answer section. We collect dues. We also have special projects that we get involved with where everybody will try to contribute more. The city pays for 2 GIS positions right now. 1 budget cuts. We've got 1 full-time, but I'm also still doing a lot of GIS duties. So we have to be mindful of the budget at all times. So we don't charge for data. We voted a while back that we were not going to do that. So all of our data is free. We used to collect money for it. That turned out to be not a great, anytime you spend 30 minutes creating an invoice for $200 worth of data, it's probably not the best use of your time. So we got rid of that. And to this day, still have quarterly meetings, touch base with shareholders, and try to make sure that we are well funded. so that we can get those upgrades when we need them. And to date, we've spent probably $1.5 million on infrastructure and data, and continue to put money into the system, because you're only going to get out of what you put into it. So, but I just want to get real quick so we can get to the, I didn't want anybody to get cut off from having to get a chance to ask questions. So
Right.
we'll be here. You can ask questions.
Well, Steve, thanks. Now's the time to open things up for questions. You know, it makes me think we should have had about 2 hours for this session, but let's take the time we have. Ryan, can you explain how we're going to do this, the participation logistics?
During the entire session, we had one question come in through the chat. So we'll start with that one, if you don't mind, and then we can go through with anybody that has a hand raised and answer those.
Okay, can you explain, just everyone knows how to use the hand raise function? And I'm going to turn off my share here just to get that out of the way.
Yeah, so for anybody that has a question, feel free to put it into the chat, either to everyone, or if you want to remain anonymous, you can message it to myself or Pete. Again, that's Brian Herman. And we can answer those questions via text, or there is a hand raising function in the chat, and we'll try and catch those. Charles, I see you've raised your hand. I'm going to answer, do that question over text first. And then we'll go through and do that. So the first question comes from the chat, and they want to ask about the road everyone sees education playing in their organizations moving forward. And this is at every level. So I think the entry levels all the way up to the management levels. So how does everyone see education playing in their roles in their organizations moving forward?
Okay, panel members, anybody wants to respond to that?
Yeah, it never ends. I mean,
That's
it never
exactly,
ends.
exactly.
You know, if you're not learning, you're dying. You know, technology changes every day, it seems like. I mean, it's just constant and ongoing.
Yeah, learn the stuff that's going to stay. Learn server architecture, learn programming, learn the bases of geodesy. And if you want to take that next step, get your surveying degree and really make yourself a double threat. You know, I get picked on a lot for straddling that world, but I'm telling you what, there's a lot of things going on where the two worlds are going to collide. And I think you're going to need to know that higher math, and not only that, but the basis of GPS data collection, you know, not just saying 3 feet is good enough, but I'm talking centimeter. So there's a lot, like Kurt said, you keep learning, spread your wings.
One
Thanks,
thing too,
guys.
from defending it from an organizational perspective, as everyone's mindful of their budgets, you can invest in the training of and updating of your people's skills and risk that they go somewhere else, or you can skimp on that and risk that they stay.
Okay, I'm seeing a
Yeah.
hand raise. Charles Attendorf, you can unmute and state your question or comment.
I was just going to follow up and just praise, you know, sort of, that was my question. And I just want to comment, you know, we do some of that obviously with camp. And this year I'm really proud to, you know, have some people from my university getting scholarships. But I want to thank also Trisha, I know had an intern on that was a high schooler before. And that's sort of where I'm going with the question of, you know, everybody, how far, you know, what levels, and I think you all are answering that to a degree. So thanks, and this is really great. I mean, you all are just clearly, you've been working on this a long time, and you clearly have a great panel here.
Charles,
Thanks, Charles.
that's a great comment. If I can add, looking at that education question from the perspective of GIS becoming more and more integrated in our public education system, I think as more and more people are being educated on GIS, that just increases the demand and need for consortiums like we have represented here today. So, you know, I think moving forward, it's only going to, you know, reinforce what we've already been trying to do.
My
We
last
are
comment.
at the end point of this session, but Ryan, unless you think it's a problem, I'd like to run it at least another 5 minutes, if that's okay. Tricia, I'm sorry, did you have a comment?
My comment was, I think you need to look to your future as far as where you think education should go. I think you need to say, do I want to be a programmer? Do I want to be, an analyst? Do I want to be, if you're staying in GIS, I think it's good to diversify as well. And a lot of times, why I invest in high school interns and college interns is because when you look at the demographics of my team, we're not meeting that. We're meeting the 35 to 65 really well, but we're the people that we're trying to serve and the future of Kenton County, they're those 15 to 35, we'll say. So I think it's important to glean from others how they see the world. And that's not part of education necessarily, but I will say, decide where you want to go and then figure out a path to get there.
Thanks, Tricia. Anyone else? I don't see any hand raises. Let's see, anything else, Ryan, that you see in the chat?
Just had we had one comment from the chat in regards to the survey degree. They said that it's always easy to teach a surveyor GIS, but it's a whole other ballgame to teach GIS to a professional surveyor without getting the education to back it up.
Yeah, the joke on the survey side, whenever you tell them you do a lot of GIS work, that stands for get it surveyed.
That barrier between the survey and the mapping GIS profession is not quite as distinct as it used to be. But
no, it's really the lines are blurred, Pete. You're correct.
Yeah, other comments or questions? You can either. It looks like we have Mitchell. Go ahead.
Yes, I just had a quick question about setting up the quarterly meetings with the different partners. I guess the question I have is how did you get buy-in from some of those different agencies and not coming across as coming authoritative or kind of like a dictator saying, this is how you're going to do it. These are the standards that you're going to follow. How did you get that buy-in from those different agencies, or did they just want to be actively involved from the beginning?
Okay. Any of you can take that one.
Well, I'll tackle that. Our partners wanted it. It's codified in our partnership agreement that our steering committee has to meet monthly. Now, we do more often than that on occasion, given the situation. And the same with our policy board, at minimum quarterly. So, it wasn't Kurt slamming a hammer down. It's our partners are engaged and they want to know what's going on. They want to be involved. So it wasn't a hard sell. It's codified. That's what they wanted.
Yeah, I think for LinkGIS, they looked to ERISA for best practices. And that was something that ERISA had as best practices, is setting up a guidance or a policy board and then setting up technical committee. And so I believe that came from the ERISA best practices for us.
I think I'm in the same boat as Kurt. All of our people wanted to meet the same standard and wanted to be able to say that, if you shared this data with another agency, you were aware of how it came into being and whether or not you could trust it. You can't do that if you've got standards that are all over the place. So everybody that was involved and still involved comes from a position of wanting to be able to say, unequivocally that we believe this data is the best that we can produce to the standards that we have adopted.
I think all of you would probably say, even though it's not like you had to do a hard sell initially, you had to figure out how it was going to work and how this GIS partnership was going to serve those partners well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we're at an end. Ryan's telling me we're about ready to close things off. So I'd just like to thank everybody for participating in this session and the conference overall. We got a lot of good sessions and material to continue. So please participate. And thanks again. Be safe and success to all of you in your GIS programs.
Same
And
to you,
thanks,
Pete.
Ryan, very much for managing this session.
Yeah, thanks.
And of course, to all the panelists.
Thanks, everyone.